Gentlemen, we'll begin with your opening remarks, 2 minutes each, and Mr. Crow is the candidate number 1 in the drawing, and then Senator Rousey, and then Alaria Pantana. Mr. Crow.
Thank you. If there was anything that I'd like the voter to get fired up about, besides my candidacy, it would be clean water. Don't remember my first trip to Wilmington because I was only a few months old, but it's my guess my mother took me for swims in the ocean because I've been drawn to clean water in this area ever since. My most fond Wilmington experiences are body surfing in pristine water at the beach, skiing, trolling in the breakers for mackerels and blues, frying pan shoals, crabbing in the marsh, drinking Pepsi around the fire at Mason Bar Island. Believe clean water is the key to bringing Wilmington to its greatness. Fought Hugo New, fought barging New York City trash and putting it in a proposed landfill and of all the crazy places, the Green Swamp. And I'm not pleased with Titan coming here. Dredging the ship channel 5 feet deeper will rupture the Castlehane PD aquifer from Wilmington to the Atlantic. Upriver high-density animal farms are perfect incubators for the H1N7 virus that has the potential of killing billions. Clean water might be the fine line between life and death with this virus. Believe ripping a hole in the aquifer as small as possible, dig the channel for 50-foot draft ships from the ocean to Sunny Point and no further. Have pristine water and people will travel to vacation and film movies here. I'll always be working for clean water because it's special to splash around in. It's a magnet for attracting business and people to vacation, live, and retire here. Clean water shows respect for what God gives us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crow. There'll be remember she said no applause and no response, so we won't lose time. Senator Rousey.
First, let me thank the Lower Cape Fear Republican women for hosting this forum. It's a great opportunity to hear from all 3 candidates, and I'm looking forward to the debate. You know, I think about the time when I was growing up working on the family farm in the summers, where my uncle gave me 8 rows of tobacco and said, "David, this is your 8 rows to make with what you will during the course of the summer." And I remember when the labor came through the field, and I got to thinking, you know, if they topped and suckered my 8 rows of tobacco, I might have to pay them. So I went out there and I stopped them. You know, you learn a lot about the value of hard work. You learn a lot about the free enterprise system. You learn a lot about, you know, the dreams and desires, you know, that we all have to achieve and excel. I think about the folks that are coming up today. They don't have the opportunity that even my generation has had. They don't have that opportunity because we have a $16 trillion debt that's going to destroy us. They don't have that opportunity because we have a tax code that is 3.8 million words. Let me repeat, 3.8 million words is the tax code that's on the books today. You know, we need to scrap the tax code we have in place and replace it with a fair, flat, and simple tax. We have government overreach. I fought the fight in the state legislature to go after the liberal bureaucracies that were overreaching. I fought the de-annexation fight, little town just outside of Goldsboro. I led the fight on de-annexation. I've led the fight on government deregulation. I've cut spending, which is what we've got to do. I've helped balance the budget, which we must do at the federal level. And I led the fight against Obamacare in the state Senate. I can take that experience and hit the ground running on day 1 when I arrive in Washington. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today and look forward to the questions during the debate.
Thank you, Senator Rowe. Mr. Pantana.
I want to thank all of you for being here. So many of you have become not just friends, but like family. I want to honor my wife and my boys for being here tonight. This has been quite a journey. My mother, I appreciate all that you've put up with. By a show of hands, how many of you think the economy is the #1 issue to reconcile in this election? How many of you think that energy prices have a direct impact on our budding recovery? Could I see a show of hands? Okay, I'm not going to embarrass you now with another show of hands, but my question is, how many of you think that a professional background in global markets, in energy prices, in heating oil, in natural gas, gasoline, electricity, might be a useful skill set, a useful understanding to bring to solve some of the challenges that we face as a country, as a society. I'm running for Congress for 2 reasons. They're 7 and 9 now. The last time I said that, they were a little bit younger. There's some other reasons. I believe in a pro-growth agenda. I believe that if we can grow the private sector by reducing regulation, repealing Obamacare, repealing Dodd-Frank, getting rid of Sarbanes-Oxley, we can let the private sector grow and create jobs. I believe in protecting the homeland. You know I've got the scars to prove my commitment. I believe in preserving conservative values, the life of the unborn, the sanctity of marriage, the fact that our rights are God-given. Finally, I believe that we need principled leadership. We don't need career politicians. We don't need pensions for members of Congress. We don't need gold-plated health care for members of Congress. And we need term limits for members of Congress. I look forward to sharing some of those ideas with you tonight, and I'm looking forward as well to answering the questions from the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Benton. Now for your first question. As concerns, we're not going to applaud it. On the subject of national security and international energy, and we start with Mr. Benton, what role should the U.S. play in reacting to Iran's development of nuclear weapons and threat towards Israel? And at what point does the U.S. intervene to protect our interests in the Middle East?
How much time do we have now to respond to questions?
You have
90 seconds.
90 seconds.
I don't like the idea of America reacting to anything. Anybody that's ever been in a confrontation knows that the one that's reacting is not the one that's leading. I prefer America to do what it's done for over 200 years, which is take a leadership role in the world. With regards to Iran and now instability in the Middle East, threatens energy prices and in fact threatens our ability to take kids to school or buy a gallon of milk. We need to look at a couple of things. This administration has failed in sending clear and concise signals to our partners and our enemies around the world. So the first step, of course, is changing the administration, and we plan on doing that this November. Whatever the outcome here tonight, whatever the outcome at the congressional level, we'll all be working to make sure there's a Republican voice in the Congress, a Republican voice in the governor's mansion, and a Republican voice in the White House. That will be a very important first step in bringing some stability to the energy markets. Now, more specifically, we cannot allow Iran to develop a nuclear weapon. We know for a fact that Iranians were hatching terrorism plots from over our borders in Mexico to attack the Saudi ambassador and the Israeli consulate in Washington, D.C. We know for a fact that over 1,000 of my brothers and yours have been killed in Iraq and Afghanistan with the use of Iranian IEDs and Iranian technology and Iranian training. And they were willing to do all of this before they had a nuclear weapon. So what will they be willing to do after they have one? That's a very heady conversation. At the same time that I believe we must stand firmly with Israel as somebody who is in fact trained with the Israeli Defense Forces, I will also tell you we cannot allow this president or any other unilateral action without the Congress making the declaration of war. Thank you.
Mr. Crow, do you need me to repeat the question?
I think I've got the general idea. One of the scariest things I was reading that Obama said our vision was for a world without nuclear weapons. What's scary about that is usually the opposite of what he says comes true. As far as Iran is concerned, I was reading that Bill Clinton was paid $131 million to hook up Kazakhstan with Westinghouse, and now Kazakhstan has got a whole bunch of nuclear weapons. And the problem is proliferation of nuclear weapons. Now, you know, I grew up in the oil business in Texas. 1,000 feet of natural gas is selling for about $12 an MCF. There's 6 of those in a barrel of oil. That means a barrel of oil. I mean, gasoline should be selling for about $1 a gallon. You know, Cheney had that energy task force, which is great because our oil production is up to almost 10 million barrels a day. It's supposed to go up by 3. When you toss in Canada and Mexico, you know, we're so close to being self-sufficient in oil, it's incredible. But all this stuff about Iran has another program, and it goes back to the Federal Reserve, and these people, I think, are worried about losing their, I gotta stop.
Thank you for abiding by the rules. Senator Rowland, do you need me to repeat it?
If you wouldn't mind.
Okay, what role should the U.S. play in reacting to Iran's development of nuclear weapons, and at what point should the U.S. Intervene to protect our interests in the Middle East?
Well, thank you for the question. And number one, we wouldn't have the problem in Iran that we have today if we had a real president. That's the bottom line. You know, there are a number of opportunities that we've had in the previous 3.5 to 4 years to curtail this problem. You know, when you had the uprising in Iran, the president stood silent, said not a word. You know, my experience when I was over in Prague in the Czech Republic when I was in school, which completely transformed my view of the world and got me interested in politics. My roommate was from Romania. Their favorite president was Ronald Reagan. You know, one of the reasons why they loved Ronald Reagan was he stood in front of the Berlin Wall and said, Mr. President, or said, pardon me, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Their hearts leapt for joy. That's what the folks in Iran who were demonstrating not too long ago were hoping to hear from our current president, and they didn't. Now, we need to stand strong with Israel. Israel is our ally, they are our friend. We need to do everything possible through sanctions and otherwise to curtail the development of a nuclear weapon in Iran. But the main thing that will help change the course of our international crisis there will be a new man in the White House who exemplifies leadership and who stands tall and has the moral courage to do what is right.
Thank you, Senator. Before we go any further, I just would like to ask the members of the audience here if you could all turn.
Mr. Crow, I'm going to ask you to respond first to the next question if I can, sir. In your view, what is the single most important thing Congress can do to stimulate job creation?
Well, we had some opportunities. We sent the Federal Reserve sent the banks like $16 trillion. You know, if they discounted mortgages to 75% of fair market value, that would do a whole lot to stimulate the economy. You know, repeal Obamacare would be good. Reduce corporate income tax from 35% to 15% would be a good idea. Around here, I think our key to building our economy around here is clean water. I think that needs to be done. I would say that taxes, reducing taxes. Our biggest problem is we've got monopolies that are running the small guy out of business. We have a Federal Reserve that's a franchise that is getting $400 billion a year in tax money. And until we do something about the Federal Reserve and start issuing the money the constitutional way, which is from the Treasury, I don't think our economy is going to do what we want to do. We're up against a wall, and I see that as the Federal Reserve. But we can try to do it, but we've got monopolies that we're up against.
Congress can do to stimulate job creation?
Get the government out of the way. That's the single most important thing the Congress can do. You know, we need to reform our tax code. There's no reason why the tax code should be 3.8 million words. Absolutely no reason. We need to get rid of the rules and regulations that are hindering business, preventing people from starting up new businesses. Not long ago, I was watching Fox News, and there were 5 CEOs, and one of the questions asked was, if you were starting today, could you start your business? And the answer was no. The rules and regulations were such that it would be impossible for us to even get off the ground. Obamacare. Obamacare is one of the single biggest reasons why this economy is in a real slouch. My doctor, he's a few years older than I am. He shared with me this story. He said, you know, he said, I had a CEO come in here not long ago, and they asked me, what is Obamacare going to do to premiums? He said, they're going to go up. He said, you're going to see the cost of health care go up all across the board. Guy came back and later found out they chose not to hire 60 new college graduates. Those 60 new college graduates may very well have a job, but they lost an opportunity to start a career. Ladies and gentlemen, the government is the problem.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Pantano, in your view, what is the single most important thing Congress can do to stimulate job creation?
I echo the Senator's comments about getting out of the way, but there are some concrete examples that I think the audience wants to hear, and I'm going to go into some of those, but I'm going to refer you, as I did this audience member earlier, to our website, pantanoforcongress.com, or our Facebook page, where we have numbers of white papers on which regulations we would repeal and how that would create jobs specifically, because it's hard to address that in the 45 seconds that remain. But all of you know that for over 1,000 days, we have not had a budget passed. Certainly the Congress has passed the Paul Ryan budget last year. They passed the Paul Ryan budget again this year, and I'm excited about this budget. It's called the Path to Prosperity. I was proud to stand with Paul Ryan, and I took about $2 million in attack ads for doing that. Why does passing a budget like this matter? Because it has the concrete specifics that we need for job creators to be comfortable. Number one, it repeals Obamacare. Number two, it bends down the entitlement curve, which right now has all of our creditors nervous that we're not serious about tackling our debt. Well, what does that do? It hurts our credit rating. So when we go from AAA to AA, and as that process continues to roll, just as a friend, or you might even have experience borrowing too much on a credit card, that cycle gets vicious and it continues, well then it gets harder and harder to borrow money to start or to grow businesses. So repealing Dodd-Frank, making it easier for banks to lend. That would keep more of our local businesses in business because they could borrow capital and they wouldn't be so afraid of the onerous rates. The Paul Ryan budget speaks to lower tax rates, both at the corporate level. Do you know that right now America has the #1 highest tax rate in the world? We need to bring that down. The Ryan budget does it. That's a concrete plan. Thank you.
Gentlemen, we will start with Senator Rouser. Other than proceeding with the Keystone Pipeline, what else could Congress do to increase develop domestic production of energy sources?
Well, first of all, we need to get the rules and regulations that are preventing us from tapping into all of our natural resources out of the way. The truth of the matter is, we are so wrapped around the axle by the environmentalists and others on the left that we can't tap into the natural resources that we have. I am firmly convinced that if the rest of the world thought we were serious about tapping into all the natural resources we have, drilling in Anwar, natural gas in North Carolina, you name it, the price of gas would fall dramatically tomorrow. So the answer really is quite simple. Let's get rid of all these rules and regulations that say if you have an endangered species, and by the way, how many of us know how many endangered species are on the endangered species list? How many of us know how many endangered species have come and gone that we don't even know about? I think you get my point. You know, our priorities are in the wrong place. Our priorities ought to be about national security and ought to be about job creation in this country, not worrying whether or not there's a certain species that has 2 families or 3 families and trying to take care of that. Now, I'm all for the animals, but we got to have our priorities straight. And there's no reason why we can't tap into every possible resource we have in this country in a very environmentally sensitive way. We have the technology to do it, and we should do it.
Mr. Pantano, what can Congress do to increase and develop domestic production of energy sources?
We need to fire the chairman of the Department of Energy. We need to fire the chairman of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, Martin Yasko, and Stephen Chu. The reason we need to do this is that they have hamstrung our ability to be active in exploration off the coast and here at home. The Senator's correct that environmentalists have hijacked our energy policy and our energy agenda here in America. In North Carolina alone, whether it's in the Piedmont or off the coast, natural gas could allow us to bring down our corporate tax rate, bring down our income tax rate, bring down our gas tax. In Pennsylvania alone, it's created over 140,000 jobs they didn't know that they would have. So natural gas is very exciting. But we have another industry here, right here in this district, the nuclear energy industry. We have a reactor on the coast, very similar to the Fukushima model, and we hold waste there. Why does that matter? Because this administration, Harry Reid, and a political favor done by Barack Obama, killed the Yucca Mountain storage project. Why does that matter? Because if a neighborhood anywhere in this country doesn't have a place to put its trash, it's not going to build new nuclear reactors. Why does that matter? Because one of the industries that we have up the road, GE Hitachi, We're in the nuclear business here, friends, but more importantly, this is an industry that America created. We're now laggards at number 3 in the world. It ought not to be that way. We have renewable, safe, clean sources of green power, should we choose to use them. Instead, we've allowed the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to hamstring us. And that's with a consequence, and it's a risk to your safety. Thank you.